welcome back, peeps, to another episode of the World of Ted, where we explore how single Latter-day Saints can learn, live, and love truly enjoyable dating. So, in the last episode, we looked at this article from Sister Ramona Morris. It was published in Exponent, and in fact, let me pull it up here. We can dive into this. So here we go. This article here from Exponent. Dearliest woman, it's time to break your own heart. And we saw that she didn't really, go into a real explanation of why it's time to break your own heart. I think she was up against the deadline, to be honest with you. But be that as it may, went over it, gave my commentary on this. And we stopped at the comments down here at the bottom. And I wanted to get into those comments for this episode of the World of Ted. Now, I haven't read the comments yet, so we may be surprised together. Let's dive in here. So, first we've got Sister Stacy saying, Ramona, I love this. I struggled with this for years. I never had many dating opportunities. Well, that depends on how you define an opportunity. Oftentimes women have plenty of opportunities for dating, but because they listen to the natural woman, which is hypergamous, they're always wanting to go over and up on the scale, right? They don't want to date down because they don't want to marry down. They want to marry up. So, you could have a great guy who's going to be faithful and is going to take care of you and is going to, give you at least a moderate level of comfort and, just basically do the things that a good husband should do. And yet, because he's not above you, you don't even look at him as an opportunity. He's not even on your radar. So again, it depends on how you're defining opportunity. I've been told I'm intimidating. Heaven forbid a woman know a lot about the gospel and have an MA degree. This again, I don't think this is intimidating for the reasons that you think it is. Women who are educated are not intimidating because they're educated. Women who are educated are intimidating because they're always, again, they got that hypergamous nature about them. They want to find somebody who's better than they are. So, my guess is, again, going back to what you just wrote, in the previous sentence, you haven't had many dating opportunities. That's because if you're a really educated woman, you're looking for someone who's above you. So you're going to be looking for someone who has more education than you have. So if you've got, an MA degree, you're looking for someone who's got a master's degree or a PhD. Well, that really narrows the pool. And then beyond that, you're probably working in a professional capacity. So you're not going to be, you're going to be looking your nose down on Mr. Joe Plumber, because Mr. Joe Plumber is just not, he doesn't have the status. And he's not I don't know. Plumbers these days can make a whole lot of money just because nobody wants to do it. A lot of these trades can make really buku bank money. But you're probably looking for somebody who's in a professional field and making, at least 50% more than you're making. So let's say you're making $100,000 a year. You're not going to date anyone who's making less than $150 a year because you want somebody who's above you. Again, it's that hypergamy at work here. You want somebody who's above you so that you can be dating up, so you can marry up. That's what this is all about. And until you see through that veneer and get to what's real, okay, not just in this world, but in the world to come, and start becoming a more covenant woman who values making and keeping sacred covenants and value those things of eternity more than the things of this world and this life. Not to say that those things that you're valuing aren't important at all. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying they're not the most important things. And you seem to be making them the most important things. But again, I'm reading too much into this. I finally gave up several years ago. Yeah, because you limited your pool so much, your probability of success was near zero. So yeah, and that would just get you discouraged. You're frustrated because, again, as we've said time and time again, Frustration is a sign you're going about something the wrong way. When you get frustrated, you need to stop, take a step back, and reevaluate how you're approaching things, because there's something wrong with it. And very often, the approach is coming in the way you think. You've got a faulty assumption, you've got a bad attitude, you've got, perceptions that aren't quite right. You've got self-talk that's getting in the way. Whatever it is, there's something going on up here that's not right. It all goes back to the way you think. If you clear this up, you'll clear everything else up. If you don't clear this up, then it's hard to clear this stuff up and keep it clear. I finally gave up several years ago after yet another guy ignored me. Okay, well, see, here's the thing. Are you stopping to ask yourself, why did he ignore you? Why did he ignore you? What were you not offering him that he wanted? And what efforts did you make to try to get him what he wanted? See, if you're going to progress, let's go back to fundamentals. The fundamentals of the dating journey. If you're going to progress, you've got to recognize there are stages to the dating journey. And in order to progress from one stage to the next, you have to have the agreement to progress to whatever stage you want to progress to. So if you don't get the agreement, you don't progress. It's just as simple as that. And the way you get the agreement is by being agreeable enough. It's got to be agreeable enough for both parties. So if the guy is ignoring you, then maybe you're not offering him what he really wants. And the way to get the agreement is to change yourself so that you offer what he wants. You become more agreeable. It works the other way too, brethren. I mean, guys, you've got to be agreeable enough for the ladies. That's the way that works. Because if you don't get an agreement, you don't progress. That's fundamental. Another guy hurt me and I realized it's just not worth it. Well, you think it's not worth it because you haven't tasted success. And the reason why you haven't tasted success, as I've just got done explaining, you're all screwed up here. You're looking at things the wrong way. You've got wrong assumptions. You're defining things the wrong way. You've basically set things up so that you're going to fail. You're not setting things up for success. And the way to set things up for success is to understand the fundamentals of the dating journey, understand the way you should be thinking about things, and align yourself with true principles. I've told the Lord it will have to be a Rebecca at the well with Abraham's servant experience if he wants me to get married. That's great. Dictating to the Lord how things are going to be. I'm sure that's always worked out well. It's been freeing and giving me so much peace. Well, the reason why it's freeing is because you've given yourself a different identity that allows you to feel like you're liberated. But are you really liberated? You're not really aligning yourself with true principles. You're not placing the things of eternity above the things of this world. Everything is centered around your identity as being connected to somebody else. So once you let go of that thinking, then that is going to feel freeing. That is going to feel liberating. There's no denying that. But as we got done saying in the previous episode of The World of Ted, just because things feel a certain way doesn't mean they are a certain way. So I ask, are you really free? Just because you feel liberated doesn't mean you really are. Give me so much peace. I'm not saying it's not lonely. That comes with the part for the course, honey. But I would rather be lonely than in a marriage because I was desperate or thought I could fix someone. Well, now there's some truth to that. Okay, I give you some kudos for that, right? You don't want to get married because it's a checklist item. But I think it's been a huge problem. And the reason why it's a checklist item is because we're not thinking about what we're doing. And we've got this culture that is centered around something that it's like you want to be accepted, you got to be married with kids. So a lot of us have gotten married and had kids so we can be accepted. And then we find out, hey, there's more to this being married with kids thing than just being accepted within the subculture. A lot more. And I think we need to recognize that. JC responds, it's better to be alone than it is to be in hell with someone else. Yeah, that's true. I don't know if you're going to be with someone else if you're in hell. I mean, part of being in hell is being alone. But which is why I was hesitating as I was thinking about that statement. But I have no qualms in saying, yeah, it's better to be single and happy than married and miserable. I'm glad you've realized this because so many don't until it's too late. The church needs to do a better job of teaching this in young women's and single adult relief societies instead of pushing marriage so hard and idealizing it so much. Well, let's be careful here. Let's be careful. We don't want to discourage people from creating righteous families. In fact, we want to do everything we can to encourage the creation of righteous families. I think what we're missing is a sense of the middle ground, right? Again, we're thinking in these binary terms. It doesn't have to be one extreme or the other. There's a middle ground that I think we need to embrace, because that's where we're going to find balance between the two sides here. It's not so much of, well, you're either going to be blissfully married or you're going to be completely miserable. It's not one or the other here. And I don't think we should be looking at, let's just get married, on the one hand, but then let's just totally ignore it because the juice just isn't worth the squeeze on the other. I think there's a middle ground that we need to be looking for, which is we want to embrace marriage, but we want to do it in a better way. Not as a checklist item, but as something that is really fulfilling and ennobling and enriching, and to have that attitude towards it. We don't want to discourage the family as the institution of society and as the institution of eternity. So we do want to talk about marriage, and we do want to, there's some pushing that we do want to do. We also want to be cognizant to get that balance out on the other side of the need to approach it in a better way. In that vein, I wish people who've been married for several years and got hitched in the 18 to 23 age range would stop pushing marriage to single fathers and stepmotherhood onto single women who are 30 plus. Well, okay, I can see you have your opinion, but I got mine, honey, and it ain't yours. How do you know that these people have been married for several years? They may be very happy, and they're just trying to share that happiness with people that they care about. That's been my experience when I run into this sort of thing. So, yeah. Entering into a blended family situation is not for the faint of heart or wallet. That's very true. It is a huge sacrifice these people are asking these women to make, and there are complications and premeditated resentments on all sides. That's very true, but it's not like marriage in any other vein is not complicated in its own right. I mean, however you go about it, there are going to be complications. So I think what we need to do, instead of saying, well, we don't want to go this way because it's too complicated, let's instead say, okay, let's recognize the reality and let's work to put in place the tools, the systems, the thinking that we need to overcome and deal with those realities. I think that's really where we need to be. I did a similar thing to you and told the Lord that if he wants me to marry a single father, become a stepmother, and take on all its entails, the circumstances would have to be truly extraordinary, and there would have to be a divine hand, divine witness at play. While life does get lonely being single, I would rather be single and have my independence than be trapped in a marriage that isn't right for me, or in a blended family situation where I have no say in how my own life and marriage would play out. Woman, you are ignorant. Oh my gosh. Okay, first of all, I've never been married, but I know enough about marriage to know you are freaking ignorant. Oh my God, where do I start with this? So, again, it seems like you're thinking in binary terms. It's like, I gotta have it's gotta be blissfully right and lead me to my happily romantic ever after. Or if it's not that, then it has to be this other side where I'm totally put down and oppressed and repressed and just enslaved to misery. And whoa, I'll be crying tears for all eternity. It's not one or the other. life is very often, again, not black or white, but gray. It's in the middle. Can we wake up and realize that it's not all bad? It's not all good. It's a combination of two, and we have to work together as companionships, partners coming together. That's what real marriage is. Real marriage is coming together and figuring out, okay, how can we work with each other to make the best of our situation and be maximally happy? That's where it comes from. It's not about something. It's like it's not like having the right person. You cross all the I's, you dot all the T's, and then everything blissfully plays out because you've got the two pieces connected together. The happiness that comes from marriage doesn't come from the two pieces being together. It comes from what the two pieces do to stay together. It comes from them working with each other. It comes from giving to each other and sacrificing to each other and demonstrating acts of love and working to help each other overcome their imperfections and become better together. That's where it comes from. But again, you're probably another one of these super educated people who are like, you gotta look at somebody who's better than you. Because if you're not better than you, then you're not going to feel satisfied. You'll never feel satisfied. And again, we've got to get over that. We've got to replace the natural woman with the covenant woman. And until you get to that point, you're just going to keep running into the same business that you're running into now. Where dating is just something that's just not satisfying for you, and you become prone to leaning against marriage as an institution, leaning against the family as an institution. It's not all one or the other. And you're just so straight away from fundamentals. What can I say? Lily says, I ask this as a serious question because it's something I cannot get over. How do you feel valued when the be-all, end-all of our very existence is supposed to mean pairing off? I'm 53, never married, childless. At this age, I do not want to get married. Well, I can't blame you for that. I'm perfectly happy as is, but there are a lot of us in the LDS church. I know a lot of good women, older, never married, childless, looks have faded, and I wonder, does God care about any of us? Since we are filling the measure of our creation and creating an eternal family, it's like we are just leftovers. How can God really value all these leftover women? Well, the first thing I would suggest you do is adjust your periphery. Adjust your vision. Your focus is clearly, placed upon this world and this life and only this world and this life. You're not seeing eternity. You're not seeing the length and breadth of your existence. You're only thinking about this world and this life. And we get into so many problems when the limit of our vision is this world and this life. Because when we think that that's all that there is, then you're going to feel exactly this way. Read the way she feels. This is exactly the way this type of thinking leads you to be. The results you have in your life come from the way you're thinking. You don't feel worthy. You don't feel valued. You don't feel loved. Well, it's because you're thinking this way. That's really the bottom line to it. Until you step back and say, hey, wait a minute. I need to be approaching this differently. I need to change the way I think. I need to look at things differently. Challenge your assumption, because this type of thinking comes from the assumption that this life is what matters. And this life is all that matters. When you think about it in terms of eternity, things get broadened out. I mean, your value doesn't come from being paired off. Your value comes from being a child of God. And as long as you're walking on that path of discipleship, the covenant path, and doing the best you can with that covenant path in this life, then whatever happens in the next life, be okay. It'll be okay. The end-all and be-all of your existence is not pairing off. You're responding to the traditional culture that we've had, where in order to belong, you've got to be married with kids. You need to get rid of that thinking, and you need to start embracing a culture that's Christ-centered. And if we all start doing this, we can be the agents of change that we need, that will help all of us, single and married, to be so much better. Elisa says, I'm sorry you don't feel valued. Personally, I think the church has created a false idol in the heteronormative nuclear family. I don't think everyone needs to get married or have kids or whatever. I'm glad you found happiness with a different life trajectory. I just wish the church could be more validating of that. That's a really tight rope to walk. You don't want to be putting life, if we say that life without a family is somehow equal to life with a family, that denigrates life with the family. That denigrates the family as an institution of both society and eternity. So we don't want to do that. At the same time, I think the balance that we're looking for is to recognize that we're all on different points on an eternal path of progression. We're all at different points along the path. Again, it's not all about this life. We all need to broaden our vision and realize it's not just about this life in this world. And whatever we have to deal with is whatever we have to deal with. But it's not all about this life in this world. We need to broaden our vision. And I think too many of us don't really feel that. We're so caught up in the mentality, and then we have a habit of seeing things only in terms of this life. And I think we need to get out of that. JC, I agree with this. God's plans for each of his children are so individualistic. I don't know about that. As is the personal revelation people receive for their lives. Marriage and parenthood are not in the cards for everyone in this life. I don't necessarily agree with that. Doesn't mean it won't happen later, but it may not happen on earth, and that's okay. Okay, I agree with that sentiment there at the end. Instead of making an idol out of the heteronormative nuclear family, the church would be better to teach members to live their life in a way that aligns best with the personal revelation they receive from God. No, and in accordance to the plan he has just for them. No, no, no. If you're going to do that, why even have church? Seriously, if you're going to go that route, why not? Why even have a church? Why even have a shared list of? Why even have the prophet who receives revelation for the whole church? If we're all just going to be guided ultimately by the revelation we receive individually, why do I need church? Why don't I just live life on my own? You're toying with danger here. This is fire you're playing with. Really is. Yeah, I mean, now, what you really need to be looking at is saying, okay, the real enemy, if there's an enemy here, is the traditional culture that is centered around being married with kids. That's the real enemy here. And what we really need to do is take a look at this and say, okay, what we want is a different culture, one that is centered around Christ. If I'm keeping all the covenants that I can make, that should be the culture that we want. And that's the culture the church is actually trying to create. If you haven't seen the recent fireside presentation on the new handbook and the section on singles in the new handbook, flip over. It's there on the Join the Journey Radio YouTube channel. I might put it up on Rumble. We'll see what happens. I mean, you certainly access it there on the Join the Journey webpage. I've got links there on the webpage for Join the Journey Radio. But the culture is what you really want to focus in on. Let's see. Heather says, thank you for the good reminder that we cannot be responsible for other people's happiness. So many of us women are trained to caretake and sacrifice. Those can be virtues, but not if they take over our lives. Yes, balance is the key. And as a fellow night owl, I agree that after midnight is when all the good ideas are ready to be explored. Well, again, like I said last week, I think that's just because that's your quiet time. It's the quiet time, not the time of day, that's really getting those ideas to grow and grow out. So, hey, I think this is the end. So let me just say this to kind of wrap this up. We don't want to be thinking in extremes. We don't want to be thinking it has to be one or the other. Let's get rid of the binary thinking and start looking for the middle ground, the place in the middle where, we don't have to be on one extreme or the other. There are some things in life and in society that are really here on the wrong side of things. But that doesn't mean that we have to go full bore, bring the pendulum all the way back to the other side. Because extremes in either side of center is just going to deviate us off the path that we really do need to be taking. And that path is the covenant path. We need to have our own testimony and get our own revelation, yes. But we also need to support the brethren. We need to be devoted disciples of our Lord and Savior. And, a lot of that's just going to come out of our own individual determination to make whatever covenants we can make and keep the covenants we have made. And if we have made all the covenants we can make, then we just keep looking for more. But we never give up. Never give up, because we have a broader vision. It's not just focused on this world and this life, but extends beyond this life into eternity. And to recognize that we all are on different points on the path. And I think with that vision and that focus, we'll have a much, much better reality. Well, that's all the time we got for this episode of The World of Ted. Thank everyone for watching. What can I say? Hope this was helpful for you. And if it was, be sure to spread the word. Spread this around so we help other people. And be sure to come back next time for another wonderful, glorious episode of The World of Ted, where we explore how single Latter-day Saints can learn them in love truly enjoyable dating. See you next time.